The Comox Valley Conservation Strategy is a bottom-up process. This was something that was designed by basically the Comox Valley Land Trust and a number of partners. We had all of our local planners all the way along as advisors. So a lot of the times that we got kind of stuck in the government process and that kind of thing, we had our advisors there to help us along. A number of other advisors, people like Dr. Will Marsh, various other expertise that we drew on. And what we ended up doing, with the thanks of many sponsors, particularly the Real Estate Foundation, was to produce the document Nature Without Borders. And I do have a few copies. You can download this at our website. And on our website, here's my last slide. So even if you just read the executive summary and the recommendations, I think you get a pretty good idea. The rest is the science-based part of it. But what I'm talking about today is how these things come together to stop ecosystem loss, protect and restore biodiversity, prepare for population growth better than we have in the past, and provide for a sustainable economy. Now, of course, I'm coming from a land base, and I'm going to try and make this a little more water-centric as I go. The Nature Without Borders report is really based on some really good science. If there's any reason that this document has gone as far as it's gone and got the kind of endorsements that it has, it's because the science is there. This is a compilation of ecosystems. These are intact ecosystems that were inventoried between, well, about 99 up to about 2002. This is the SEI, the Sensitive Ecosystem Inventory from the Wildlife Service, plus a whole bunch of stuff that was brought together by various groups, stewardship groups, etc. It was all mapped and put together by Project Watersheds. There's been incredible support to this whole process by providing these wonderful maps. We really like to thank Project Watersheds for years of providing this kind of mapping for us. In 2004, this was reassessed by the Canadian Wildlife Service and through some of the NGOs as well. And that's what we found by 2004. The black is gone. The yellow portions are altered or degraded in some way. So that's what we have now. That's 2004. It's now 4 years later. That's what it was. That's what it is. So when we look at those kind of losses, most of those losses are largely because of development pressure. Things have been moving into our riparian zones, into our sensitive ecosystems. I can think of a subdivision, recent subdivision in the Comox Valley that was built right over a wetland. So these kinds of things are continuing, and we really are concerned about that, not only for the loss of the habitat, but it's not really the best place to build on wetlands. There are some of those homeowners who have problems with damp basements and these kinds of things. So we need to take more of a systems-type approach. We also see real opportunity as development proceeds for restoration. If we can talk our developers into restoring ecosystems, restoring creeks and streams as we develop, we have this wonderful symbiotic opportunity. Wetlands, of course, very, very important for the services that they provide. These two pictures are interesting. One is a created wetland that was built for a farmer. Kathy, you're familiar with this one. This is the Williams farm. It serves as fish habitat, serves as irrigation ponding. The fish are protected from pumping. The stream runs through. It's just a tremendous thing. Plus, people actually go there to look at it because it's so beautiful. The other one is a wetland that was restored to a lower level than it was so that we could help the local farmer drain the land. His horses, he had very, very expensive quarter horses that he raises. The horses who were having problems. So he drained the wetland. We negotiated over about a year period and we're able to restore this wetland, albeit to a bit lower level, and help him drain his land. So we got a really good compromise. He got his dry fields, and we got about 3/4 of the wetland. Forest and greenways, of course, you're all aware of these kinds of things, sequestering of carbon. You know, it's sequestering of carbon, it looks like it might be producing some wealth in the future as well. So there's a Retention of water on the land is largely what we're going to be talking about today, slowing that rapid runoff of the rainfall loss. Of course, the kind of thing we're proposing to protect stream infrastructure, natural systems. I always like drawing your attention to crop pollination. With bees disappearing all over the world, what's going to happen to our crops if we lose this? Biodiversity services have been largely undervalued, not figured into the costs of what we've done. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a planning framework that not only protects these ecological areas, but begins to link them together over time. We've concentrated on 4 areas, riparian areas. These, of course, are so important in many, many ways. Sensitive ecosystems, 2 pictures here. Forests, second growth forests are largely becoming intact ecosystems around the valley. 80-year-old forest is now starting to offer some really good ecosystem services. And wetlands, again, very, very important. Critical watersheds, these 2 watersheds were recommended in a larger conservation strategy, the Vancouver Island Conservation Strategy, as fairly pristine watersheds and critical to the long-term.
They're very noisy in the back, Jack.
Okay, and critical to the long-term health of the region. The thin black line around here is the study area of the Nature Without Borders project. This is the Sable watershed to the south and the Browns watershed to the north. You can see too that by having some kind of level of protection on that watershed basis, you get a connection for wildlife between the east and west coast of the island. Upland wildlife corridors, these have proved to be the more controversial or difficult concept to get across or to get a lot of buy-in. But these are, again, opportunities over time to build contiguous wild space so that our animals can migrate like they need to. So let's have a look at what we're talking about. These are the currently protected areas in the valley, pretty spotty. A lot of the area around the cities, just so that you know what you're looking at here, the brown area is just the land base. The light blue areas are creeks, streams, wetlands, etc. And the white is the cadastral information, or the property lines in the valley. So that's why there's these white blobs in our municipal areas, because the lines are quite close together. Strathcona Park offers a real good refuge habitat. We've got the Cumberland Forest is really intact. Seal Bay has been compromised to a certain extent with human ingress, new trails and bridges, so there's a lot more activity in there. But the rest of it basically are playing fields, schoolyards, these kinds of things. Great open space, great for recreation, but not what we would call ecosystems in themselves. So we're recommending a 30-meter buffer on all creeks and streams. Not a no-go zone per se, but a kind of conservation zone, so that anything that happens in there, much like the RAR, happens very, very carefully. That's the sensitive ecosystems. You can start to see that these buffers really start to link these things together. That's the critical watersheds that come in, again, for that larger movement of animals from the east coast to the west coast. And that's the wildlife corridors we've just brought in there now. Now these are kilometer-wide swaths on the landscape, and we're not suggesting that they need to be a kilometer wide. We're suggesting that this is a tool that planners can use over time to build these corridors as best as possible when you're working with landowners. So let's look at a close-up. This is the Millard-Piercy watershed, very tiny little watershed, really understandable because of its size. You can kind of wrap your arms around it and really understand it. When we zoom in, right away we see part of the problem. There's 4 jurisdictions, and each of these jurisdictions have a slightly, or in some cases, a more than slightly different way of approaching this. So what we're recommending is you take away the boundaries.